Welcome to we'll wait. And welcome to the DocumentWrite AI stream. And today we have two special guests. We have Marie and Michael from Markprompt. Yay!
Hi everyone.
Hi everyone.
Yay! Hello. So, as everyone knows, we do this every week. And a little introduction about DocumentWrite. We focus on developer documentation. And if you like this kind of thing, like if you love learning about AI and technical documentation, you can sign up for a newsletter. The link will be below. And that will ship here. But right now, we are talking to Michael and Marie. So welcome. Thank you for joining us.
With pleasure.
Thanks
excited to be here.
Excited to have you. As Charles already knows, I've been talking about the two of you for the past 4 months now.
Yeah.
So you started. It's beautiful because we started 2 months ago. So that touched us.
Yes. When did you? So we're actually getting into our first question. So we gave you an introduction, but please introduce yourself and introduce what is Markprompt?
Yeah, sure.
So yes, we founded Markprompt together. And before that, so we are from Europe, basically like Switzerland, Denmark, France. And we met in Paris, and we are also married. And 6 months ago, we decided to move to the US, to the Bay Area for our company. So it's a big change, and we are very excited to be here.
There's so much. I'm going to get to the personal one. Why San Francisco?
Yeah,
it sounds like that sounds obvious, but yeah.
Yeah, well, we felt this pull, because of the COVID, we were not able to travel a lot back then. And when the restrictions were lifted, we started coming here more and more. We have all our customers, all our users, most of them are really here. And every time we came to the Bay Area, we had such interesting, eye-opening meetings, and we didn't want to come back to Europe, basically. So we were kind of always extending the stays. At some point, we just looked at each other and thought, okay, we should actually be living here full time. So we took the decision and have moved to Menlo Park, which is very nice and beautiful. So we are very happy to be here.
And we learned so much. Like there are hackathons, meetups, founders, companies that we learn and very inspired from. So it helps us a lot in creating the product and getting this user feedback loop very fast in being able to meet in person our users.
We're actually living in the Swiss Alps, so in a mountain village, completely remote, before coming to California. And this was, of course, it was lovely. It was great, but and it worked in the Zoom kind of era. But we also felt the need to actually meet people in person and get out of this bubble up in the mountains.
So Charles is going to probably have to stop me because I'm going to just make this really personal. I'm so glad that you've mentioned that, because I have thought about, so I live in the middle of nowhere. I live in a beautiful forest in North Carolina. Well, I live in the country in North Carolina, with a lot of lakes and fish. But there's a lot of negative press about San Francisco, and that San Francisco is dead. What do you say about that?
We don't feel that. We are surrounded by so many talented and people and founders and developers. We feel we learn so much, so we don't feel it's dead.
No, not at all. Especially now with all this, all these AI companies coming together, exploring, experimenting. There's so many events, so many, hackathons. So many people, dropping by. So we feel like it's really very vibrant here.
How do you get Markprompt in front of these folks?
Thanks to Twitter a lot.
Yeah. Word of mouth. We've been very fortunate to see this grow organically. We're still building the foundations of our platform, so we don't do any sort of marketing or anything. So we've just been very fortunate to have inbound interest and then people speaking about us and so on.
That's amazing. Could you tell us more about what was the history like? What inspired you to create Markprompt?
Oh, sure. So actually 2 years ago, we co-founded with Marie Motif, which is an in-browser IDE for Markdown and code. So as you know, a lot of documentation is built on top of Markdown and then extensions of Markdown where you can actually embed code components, typically, interactive code snippets, visualizations and things like that. And our mission here is really to bridge the gap between developer tools and no-code tools so that everyone within a team can be on the same page rather than siloed apart in different tools. And so people build, when you have Markdown and React and JavaScript in general at your disposal, you can build all sorts of things. So people were building personal websites, blogs, landing pages, and so on. But at some point, people started building docs. And we could see this really interesting problem with docs because we saw all the friction involved, especially when teams grow, they start having scaling issues, both in terms of maintaining the docs and onboarding new people. And we've heard all these stories about people collaborating on a Google Docs and then sending them via Slack to the developer to update, the GitHub repo, or non-technical, like non-developers who need to understand what a PR is and use the GitHub interface to make edits to their Markdown files, right? And so we thought, here's really something we can contribute to by having an in-browser IDE that is capable of using all the workflows from the developer world that allow you to build best-in-class documentation, but also make it very accessible, basically no installation required for content writers. And so we saw this use case grow a lot, and we learned a lot about the process of building docs. And so at some point we had onboarded some companies like AngelList and Cal.com and so on, and they were all like building a lot of content on our tool. And then came GPT 3.5, ChatGPT, and they wanted an AI-powered search. So we built that.
Yeah, they were asking every day, when is it ready? When is it ready?
Which makes a lot of sense, right? Because the entire knowledge base is there, so we can very easily run an embeddings process on top of it, and then build a chatbot interface. And what happened is that we launched with them. So they announced that they have now like AI-powered search, and this generated a lot of interest in specifically the AI-powered search. And so we decided to build it as a standalone platform so that you didn't have to use Motif, but could actually integrate it into your existing setup. And so make it a standalone platform and open source it. We really wanted the community to contribute and build this in the open. And that's what led us to build Markprompt. And this happened 2 months ago. And since then we've been growing it and adding new features and learning a lot about this new world where we have LLM-powered tools that can also help us solve problems. Markprompt right now is about chatbots. That's kind of the first application you can build on top of your embeddings, but it's just the first among a lot of tools that we plan to develop for content writers.
Wow. That's a lot. I want to talk about Markprompt. I just want to talk about Markprompt, but I think we didn't talk about Motif. Can you tell us how is Motif like different than a tool? Because Motif we looked at it and Motif looks very unique.
Yeah. So the unique difference here is that it's able to execute code. So there's a JavaScript runtime in the background, which means that whether you write some prose or a piece of code, it's able to understand both, right? So Contentful and other headless CMSs are mainly for content which fits within a certain schema. I mean, you're creating a new blog post, so you put a cover image, a title, a date, and some text. Here you can go much further because you can actually write the code. So if you want to write a custom component, let's say you want to have a special navigation bar for your documentation, you can actually write it there as well. So we're putting code and content basically within the same tool. And the key here is that everyone can work off of the same page. You don't have your content team on a CMS and you develop a team, pushing code. You can really work from the same tool. And so there's a bunch of things you can do here. For instance, you can instantly preview what you're writing. So that's a key thing. Instead of having to wait for deployment, you can actually, as you type, you can see the result and see if it fits, right? And then you hit publish and it goes live.
We say that it's ship as you type.
Yeah, that kind of the idea.
That's amazing.
Having to wait for all deployment flows, it happens instantly. So this is the key difference between a CMS and a tool like Motif. So it's we really see it as kind of Replit meets Notion. You see, a Notion kind of authoring interface on top of an IDE, right? That runs in the browser, so no installation required. Everyone can just sign in and get started contributing.
Rebel meets Notion is definitely the impression that I got when I was playing around with it, when I was looking at the features on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still maintaining it?
Yes, of course.
Nice. Everyone should look at Motif like product when the VCs who funded you are actually using it.
Yeah.
So we did notice that one of your funders, that their website used Motif on their site.
Yeah, we really love having our investors being like an extension of our team and getting feedback, and it's really like we really love that, having like builders.
Excellent.
So how's the growth been like for both Motif and Markprompt?
So you said, how is the growth?
Yeah, your user growth. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Markprompt has taken off very quickly, kind of, overnight. When we shipped it, we got a bunch of requests. It's been very easy also to sustain this growth because it's an API, and the API works as expected. So this is kind of, that was really like unexpected that it would take off so quickly. Motif, we have decided to have only request access, so we want to make sure that we have onboard companies that we're able to help and be fully committed to make them go live. And for a tool like Motif, it's much more complex because we're talking about typically an existing documentation base with hundreds of pages. How do we do the migration, right? How do we onboard people who have never seen Markdown before, right? How can we be there for them and help them give all the tools and build the features and integrations so that they can be fully satisfied with a tool like Motif. So we've been maintaining it in private access for now because we're still in the process of building this. This has not really been done before, being able to run an entire JavaScript runtime in the browser. So we're not running on a server. It's all like local first in the browser, so that it is very fast. That is a very essential issue that we have tackled, making sure that when you write content, you don't have a 500 milliseconds delay because the code is sent to a server, then executed, and then you can see the preview. So there was all these like technical challenges that we needed to make sure we address one after the other. And for that, we wanted to rather focus on the product and the tech itself than on growth. So I mean, obviously,
two different strategies.
Yeah, very different strategies. Markprompt is open source. Everyone can come in and sign up. For Motif is something else. We are, of course, super happy that rather known companies like AngelList and Cal.com have decided to come onto Motif, but it's also an effort. It's also a lot of work for us to onboard them and make sure that that everything is meets their expectations. We're in this kind of in between where writing content, you're also writing code, and when you write code, things can break. You're not used to that when you are in a CMS or in a Google Doc. You cannot break your Google Doc. But when you're writing JavaScript, you can break your doc because the JavaScript doesn't compile, right? So that are some of the challenges that we have to address when we onboard. A developer would just like naturally go and fix the bug because they can see on what line, and that's good, right? But here we're welcoming a completely new audience who are not familiar with the debug flows and so on. So that was something that we really wanted to do with care. So yeah.
They're used to something like an end user is just used to it working.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, just working instead of like tinkering. So a lot of developers, like to a certain extent, we expect things to break. I mean, and then we go in and we fix.
Yeah, exactly.
So you already got into this in the beginning of the interview, but could you tell us more about Markprompt and the problem that it's trying to solve? We know that it got a lot of demand, but what problem is it perhaps like a regular search or index leaves like a user wanting?
So many users use Markprompt so that in a company it's easier to access docs. So you want to add in addition to the search. So it's not we are not removing a search. We are adding something. It's more how would you say?
Yeah, it's complementary.
Yeah, complementary.
To search. I mean, this is a new kind of way of interacting with your docs, right?
And we want that both are coming together so that users of a doc can easily find the answers. That's really the need currently. It's users who are in a big docs, like 800 pages, and they have a specific question. They can ask the question and get an answer that makes sense based on all these pages of a docs.
So broadly speaking, what we see is that LLMs can solve a lot of issues that you start to encounter at scale. So typically when you're a large company with a bunch of contributions to your internal knowledge base, to your external docs, to your support tools, at some point you start to get friction, right? And having LLM tools can help you a lot. So Markprompt is an API-first approach to building apps on top of your content. So our job is to index your content, whether it's from a GitHub repo, or it's GitHub issues, or it's a Zendesk, or it's a public website, or even uploaded documents. Once we have them indexed, we can start building LLM-powered tools on top of them. So we're building the infrastructure to make this very easy and to encourage creative exploration, experimentation. The first sort of app is a chatbot. So that's the obvious thing that everyone is kind of asking for nowadays. I have a public website. I spend a lot of time answering the same questions on our support channels. If an AI chatbot can help, right, then we already have saved a lot of time and resources. But where we're coming from, especially with Motif, where we've worked with companies on docs, where we're really coming from is creating better tools for content writers and engineering teams that face these issues of maintaining docs at scale. So think about things like, you have a technical documentation with a bunch of code snippets. How can you make sure that these code snippets are always up to date and that there's no syntax errors, right? Could you make some pass in harmonizing the tone of your docs, right? 10 different styles of writing. Can we make some tools to spot, incoherent parts, missing parts of the docs, all these sorts of things. Analytics, I mean, how are people interacting with your docs? Can you ask questions to your analytics? What are the themes that people ask for the most? And the reason we wanted to build it open source and with an API first approach is that we're not gonna invent all these use cases, and we're not gonna, be able to anticipate them. So we want, of course, people to be able to contribute to our repo, but also with the API approach, we're sort of building the basic units on top of which you can then build new things. So AngelList, for instance, are starting to embed this within their internal tools, within their web application, and so on. And the idea really is that if we provide the framework to make it easy to index your content and extract, embeddings and these sorts of, these sorts of data that you need in LLMs, then people can build their own custom experiences on top of it.
Yeah, that's what we love about it. We love how flexible it is.
That's the idea.
And that you're not, yeah, and then you're not dictating the kind of tools that we're using, which probably serves my next question. Could you dig into exactly what do you mean by an API first approach?
Right. So all the interactions that you can have with the Markprompt platform can be done programmatically, right? So if you want to automatically send your documentation whenever it's updated on GitHub, right? Whenever it's pushed to the main branch, you may have a GitHub action that automatically sends it for training on the API. You can do that via API. If you want to answer questions and build your own UI on top, your own kind of prompt or your own very custom interface, you can just query our completions endpoint. We're adding new endpoints now for keyword search and for extracting relevant sections. So we're building all the features that are available on Markprompt are also exposed via an API. We have some ready-to-use JavaScript components so that you can just copy a script tag and add it to your website. We have React components and so on, but we've built them always as headless components, meaning that we are not dictating the style or the UX or what parts you need to use. You can really compose them on your own and build exactly, the sort of tools that you want, either internally or, as exposed to your audience.
Speaking about using the tools that you, sorry, Charles.
Yeah, I'm wondering, is it possible to use a different sort of LLM model? You support GPT, right?
Yeah. Currently, it's the OpenAI models because they are very performant. But I mean, obviously, this is a topic that could be, of discussion. I mean, it's open source, so we welcome contributions.
We would love.
We have an /OpenAI endpoint, right? But that would then be, a /Anthropic endpoint or whatnot.
Yeah, that's what we wanted to. Charles, number one, thank you for reading my mind. That's our next question was about what about other models like Claude?
Yeah, I think these are very interesting, especially now that we have 100K tokens. So we can start, the way that it works right now, for instance, if you ask a question, the first step is we match with the 10 most relevant sections in your docs. So we chunk your docs into smaller bits to make it easier to, find the most relevant sections. And once we have, let's say, 10 sections of content, we send the entire prompt, which, by the way, you can customize to the language model. But with 100K tokens, you could imagine that you just send, the entire code base at each, prompt. This might not be cost effective at all for the chatbot kind of interactions, but things like, docs CI, send all the docs and make sure that, language is, on brand and all the code snippets are up to date. That's the kind of thing where you might want to do it the easy way, where you don't have, specific sections, but you're really looking at the entire, corpus of data, and that you want to, make entire passes on it. So yeah, I mean, these things are evolving fast. I'm sure that OpenAI will have a very large token window soon. So these just open up for more use cases and way easier implementation.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. Thank you for that. You mentioned that you decided to make this open source. Could you tell us a bit about the growth on the contributor side, in terms of the people who are contributing to the code base for Markprompt and where you see that going in the future?
Yeah, sure. So, can you hear us? We just got a notification of some connection issues, but...
Oh, speaking of the devil.
Are we all good?
Yep, all good. I can hear you loud.
Oh, okay. Connection with there's a connection with the app. No, I can definitely hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we've been working with two contributors in Amsterdam, actually, or in the Netherlands, and they've been actively contributing every week to build new features. So this has
Hi,
been,
Nick and Remco, if you hear us.
yes,
Hey, hi. Thank you.
which is just fantastic. And there's some people that we don't know who have started contributing. So this is also we feel very humbled that people want to spend time and help us or build features. So yeah, this has, I mean, it's all like on a GitHub repo. So there's both like the PRs being, proposed and issues being filed. Obviously on Discord, we get a lot of feedback as well. So yeah, we just really love the energy and the dynamic of building in the open, and yeah,
And that everything
involving,
is transparent.
yeah.
We love these values.
And it's also, frankly, it's a very good tool to communicate with, because if people have questions or are wondering how the data is dealt with and so on, we can really literally just like point to the line of code where this happens, right? So it's really streamlined, right? Or feedback can work through GitHub issues where everything gets properly, neatly stored, and we can take action. So it's just a very nice way to build with a public product, to be able to streamline everything through open source.
We would love to have more women contributors.
Call. So, oh my gosh. Oh wow, I would make this a little bit personal, but it's gonna go back to you. I would love to contribute. Oh, I know this is not about me, but and this actually gets to our next question. I always feel like there is a culture of contributing. There are unsaid assumptions that I just don't get. And how your team is just the two of you, correct?
Full-time, yes.
How do you manage all the contributions? Like, what does it look like for open
It's
source?
24 hours.
Yeah.
Weekend included.
Yeah.
But that's part of the adventure.
We love this, and we love building this together, as a couple. This is our adventure. So we're on the same boat. So it's also we support each other. We are aligned. We're pulling in the same direction, basically, which is our product and our company. So I mean, we're here for that, and we love it.
That's actually our last question. Married couple dynamic.
Yeah, true.
Our question I want to know is, I think there's like a lot of unspoken rules when it comes to contributing, and I know I'm afraid of is that I am below the threat of the knowledge needed to contribute. So how do you deal with contributors of like different skills, different abilities, and different assumptions?
It's part of the game. I mean, I think it's our responsibility to create a culture where everyone feel they can be part of this project. And I think this comes through the way that we exchange with people. We try to make ourselves very available, answer questions, also try to be responsive. I mean, so I think this is a long-term endeavor, right? We're just 2 months in, and this will be more visible as we start growing, right? But it's something that we care about and that we try to proactively address. So for instance, you mentioned we have some investors. We have made a pre-seed round. We wanted to have angels and entrepreneurs from our space, and we got the first 10 checks in, and 9 of them were male. And so we said, listen guys, we had reached our target, investment target, but we said, listen guys, we're not going to close this round before we reach gender parity. And they all went out of their way to find great female investors. And now we are at gender parity, and we intend to continue doing that in everything that we do, as we also start growing the team and for next funding rounds and so on.
That's amazing. My question was also getting at, do you have like any that you use when you're dealing with like all these people of different like levels and different like assumptions?
Not really yet, but we're working on it. We just started implementing change sets and automated release. That's a big chunk, but eventually we'll cover all these things like code coverage. We have like linting in place and things like that. So yeah, the basics are there, but we can definitely do more, and we will as we grow.
I'm sorry to be the nerd to be like, well, show me your tools. What tools are you using?
Yeah. Actually, we even have a website, marieandmichael.com/tools.
Yeah.
So we love this
Nice.
question. So we use Figma a lot.
Yeah, for mockups, and we use the app is the Next.js application, benefiting from all the nice things from TypeScript to ESLint. A bunch of tools within
Supabase.
We use Supabase for the database.
Okay.
Which is very, very nice because everything is integrated. Supabase is a very feature complete platform, so even things like storing embeddings and doing similarity search is just an extension on Supabase. So we are able to streamline a lot of like the data processing part. So we understand that like working with large enterprise customers, there's a bunch of strings attached in terms of data management, and we want to be open and transparent and be GDPR compliant and so on. And having everything consolidated in one database really makes things easy. If you delete a project, because of Cascading deletes, everything related to a project, files, embeddings, metadata, and so on, will be guaranteed to be gone. So that really removes a lot of maintenance and extra complexity in our code base by choosing these sorts of tools.
We use Vercel as well.
Yeah, Vercel as deployment. This is so neat that you just push the branch and then instantly preview, and you can be sure that your site will always be available. We use all our APIs are behind edge functions on Vercel, so we can be sure that this thing scales without any further efforts. So yeah, we're
linear.
Really, linear for issues. Yeah, we feel like we live in times where developing web applications is there's so much incredible tooling, and the reason we can build this and maintain this and ship features so fast is because of these tools, which were not available 7 years ago. That would not have been possible. We'd need to have a fairly staff team to do this, but nowadays things have changed, and it's just so much fun.
And we love trying out new tools and always improve our settings.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Before you probably need to set up something on back and engineer tools, really make it so that you have so much and be a small team.
Exactly.
It's exactly what we want, having like small team but having a big impact.
Yeah. To the contribution, we know there are different organizations like open source, and the thing with open source is they help people with their first contribution. So if you don't mind, if open source about Markprompt, I think I'd be more than happy to have another project on it.
Yeah, sure.
It's a pleasure.
Next question. Charles, you want to take the next question, or?
Yeah, sure. So if I would like to contribute to the project, how do I get started? Where do I go? What's your Discord? Or how does someone who wants to contribute start doing so?
Yeah. So I think the easiest to go to markprompt.com, and you'll see the Discord and the GitHub icons at the top right, and they will bring you straight to the Discord and the GitHub repository. And we obviously try to maintain a good documentation. So there's both the docs on the repos and on markprompt.com/docs. So yeah, that should get you started.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I can. The response is so quick. Like I was on Discord, like asked a question. I think it answered in less than 10 minutes. So, folks, if you're looking for an open source project, Markprompt is amazing. As you can see, the maintain is so nice. And
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Mhm.
so, what is the future of content creation, you think, in the next months? Like, will the bots take over? I mean, will they need humans?
What do you think? I mean, this is
Tell everyone our opinion every week. So
Yeah.
we're curious, like, what do you think? Like, what's the
Yeah,
future
I
looking
mean,
like for like a technical writer or content creator?
I think it's really exciting, just like the whole setup, because what we say today might be invalidated in a month, right? I feel that this is how we've kind of grown our understanding, is that things we thought, in the beginning of the year are very different now, and we're just like learning as we grow. I mean, the way we think about it is, obviously LLMs are non-deterministic. This is a major issue. Can you rely on them, right? You need humans in the loop here. It would be very risky to start relying entirely on LLM with no supervision and just expect it to build, the appropriate content. We think that at least what we're thinking about is how we can build special purpose tools to solve real problems where the traditional approach was hard to implement and hard to, evolve. So think about things like, fixing syntax errors in your code snippets. That is doable via software, right? But then you have to run, a runtime that checks all these scripts, right? This is very hard, very, very technical. Language models are capable of understanding code, and they're very capable at detecting, syntax errors and things like that. Or you have a large company with a bunch of products and with a bunch of, SDKs in different languages, and you're now introducing a new SDK in a new language. That is very, very hard with, traditional tools, because you need to, update all your docs with this new language. Again, LLMs are great at transpiling code. So you have some JavaScript code and you're now supporting like Zig. Well, it's very capable of translating JavaScript to Zig when it makes sense, right? So we see that as really an enabler here, that instead of being blocked by the technical challenges, everyone can now start having this much more like creative approach, knowing, of course, that all that needs to be, supervised by humans. So humans are actually involved in the process, right?
Yeah, we don't think it will replace content writers. It will be like more enjoyable to write docs. And for instance, I'm dyslexic, and I already feel like much more confident writing docs than a few months ago. So
That's lovely. That's we always talk about the creative problems, the supervision. You already gave us one example. Could you give us some more examples of what are these higher level creative problems that humans can actually start tackling now that they're freed up from? Yeah.
I mean, this is up to our imagination now. Things like, sorting through how users are interacting with your docs, right? What are the questions being asked to your docs? These are the sort of things where LLMs have a very capable, is very capable of summarizing or thematically grouping content. So, 50% of our users are asking the same types of questions because the REST API is not properly documented. You could now just formulate this as a natural language query and be able to extract this knowledge from your, from your analytics events, right? So yeah, I mean, there's so many things we can see how this can, help solving collaboration where two different writers could be writing in different ways, and the LLM would be able to pick the version that is mostly on brand, maybe with a nicer tone, maybe with a less aggressive tone, right? Less terse or more terse, depending on your needs, right? That's very, very powerful. And these are tools that just don't exist today, right? So there are new tools at our disposal, and that we can start, integrating into our workflows to make our life, easier and more fun. I mean, maintaining docs, there's a lot of parts which are not particularly fun, right? Especially, as you start having, these scaling issues that we've been mentioning. This is tedious work, right? And if you can have this more natural way of dealing with that, we think that this is a very, very interesting approach.
Yeah, I've already spoken to some technical writers where they're used to do like localization. Like localization, do that manually. It's very hard, but now they can do it in a batch format, so that they can focus on like other problems, other accessibility problems.
Yeah. We have been thinking of things like, you have a highly technical documentation. Maybe you want a summary of that for beginners, right? What is the first, page you want to read on, your docs? Could you provide a very concise version for beginners, or, could you build automatically an FAQ, right? Based on these things. So yeah, I mean, this is just really a matter of getting the playground in place, and then, making it accessible for everyone, because these use cases are just going to, come up, I think, and flourish as the tools democratize.
I love that word, democratize.
Yeah. Sorry, Marie, you mentioned earlier that it's helped you out a lot being dyslexic. Could you give us more details about that? Exactly in what way that it's improved the user experience for you from an accessibility point of view?
So I make a lot of mistakes when I write. So I love being able to use it to just improve the way, like to make sure that there is no mistakes. But also sometimes my ideas are not very, how would you explain?
Well formed.
Yeah, well formed. And I feel like now when I prepare drafts for docs and Michael reads it, he said, "Oh, it's looking good." And I never had this compliment before.
I think this is I think this is a very general thing that, interacting with an LLM, we all start with these like ill-formed ideas, and we don't know exactly what we're trying to say in the beginning, right? And they just force you to be more clear about what is it actually the message that you're trying to convey. So you have to force yourself to distill the specific points, and then the actual formulation will, come up nicely. So this idea of just like providing bullet points, for instance, and then generating from these bullet points a draft, that's something that, we are benefiting from a lot.
Yeah, I feel much more productive and I enjoy it much more.
Right.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And I think that also is another boost in productivity. When you're actually enjoying the work that you're doing, you become even more productive rather than from a amount of time spent point of view. So it sounds good.
And I have more confidence as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel the same way about code. But like I use these tools. I use these tools to like, I don't know, create apps in like JavaScript, or maybe like dabble in PHP. And my gosh, I'm just it's just really helped me so much than like when I was just coding and doing all this stuff myself. So the productivity boost is really like something to write home about.
Yeah.
And so we're going to end with this is our last question. Michael, you've mentioned this before. You are a husband and wife team.
Mhm.
What are the advantages of working with your spouse?
It's amazing to wake up in the morning and like to directly be with the person you trust, you love, and having impact together. And so everything is going much faster. And yeah, we just love it.
Yeah, I mean, we trust each other a lot. We don't, need to go through any sort of discussion. We don't argue really because we know we are very complementary in terms of skill set. So we cover different grounds. So it's just really nice to know each other so well that we don't need to, go through all the decisions we make, because we just, make them, and they are always, aligned with the expectations of, that we have of each other. So, but this also, we feel like this because we are, we have seen how we work together and have really been, testing it out. And so it works super well because we are so complementary. So yeah, we're just like really fortunate to be in that situation.
And having a co-founder is like a marriage, because it's really a long-term relationship. And the trust is so important.
That's what I hear. And when I know several husband and wife founders, and it runs so smoothly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there are many assumptions of, oh well, you spend all your time about what about this problem? But like for the people that I've seen, it seems like it's just it works just really well.
Yeah.
And it was the same last year when we decided to move to the US. We did it for the company, and it was very natural because we are moving together for our company. And yeah.
I mean, our company is our life, right? So all the choices we make are aligned, right? Because this is our project that we want to build together. This is an amazing adventure that we're living, and the fact that we can live it together without any other constraints, we can really take decisions very quickly without having to think about any sort of commitments or anything, because we're in the same boat basically.
Yeah. I think a really good example of what you're talking about is like this interview, because you guys, the way you've been answering the questions has been so smooth, like each one taking their turn without like any obvious communication. Naturally, you just know, I'm gonna answer this, I'm gonna answer this, and it just flows really nicely.
Yeah. And we are also like having this trust. It means that we are 100% transparent about everything, and it's yeah, I love it. I really recommend.
Well, it's so beautiful. I wish there was like heart emojis that I don't have any heart emojis on hand.
Yeah.
So what's next for Markprompt? Like what features are you working on and you're about to release?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we are very excited.
So we are building like the two big milestones for the coming months is analytics. So being able to ask questions to the questions being asked, so that you as a content writer can start spotting missing pieces in your documentation. If a lot of questions come unanswered, it might be an indication that there's something missing in your docs. Or what are the typical questions being asked over and over again, right? Maybe we can make that more prominent in our docs. So analytics tools is one big feature. And the second one is apps/integrations. So being able to build integrations that leverage our indexed content so that you can build easily on top of it. Things like instant search, right? Do you want to integrate within the chatbot interface? Do you want to integrate Algolia search? These are two separate problems, but they can all leverage from a streamlined way of processing your sources. So that's the next big thing.
Sounds very
That's
exciting.
incredible.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there a question that we didn't ask you that you want us to ask you?
No, I think
we've gone through a lot of things. This was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, if there's something that we've missed, let us know. We will be more than happy to ask you that question.
Maybe we should feed the transcript into Markprompt, and we can ask Markprompt that.
Yes, actually, there's a great company that we have been working with, which is called Contender, and they create transcripts from your videos. So typically, if you're at a conference, they can take all the conference videos and transcribe them into Markdown. And so they are sending all this Markdown to Markprompt, and then they have a prompt so that you can basically ask your speakers for questions, right?
Wow.
That's very neat, right? If you did not attend a session, if you missed a session at a conference, not only can you see the entire transcript, but you can directly ask questions. So obviously, if you put this video on Contender, it would be fairly easy to create a prompt on top of this interview.
Wow,
That's incredible.
Yeah. Wow. And I think going into what you said earlier, that there's a lot of different applications that you just won't think about.
Yes, that's our mission, really. Create the playground so that everyone can, start doing creative exploration and build their own tools to fit their own needs, because each team, each documentation team, each engineering team has different needs. We can see it with all the, companies we're working with. They each have their own needs. So can we provide the foundation so that it's easy to build on top of it?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I like Markprompt a lot, because I feel like before they just made a lot of assumptions of what rooms you had and what form you would information. Markprompt is so I started a career with machine learning, and like so much of your time was spent like dealing with the environment and also dealing with dependency issues. Like Markprompt, like once you get the hang of it, it is really like a plug and play, and that is incredible.
Thank you so much.
You.
We're very happy to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it took us a while, but when I start using it, it's amazing. It's cool, and I'm always like trying to add trying to implement it in different use cases, and so thank you so much.
Of course.
Yeah. Thank you both.
Amazing.
So at this point, this is the end of the interview. Thank you so much for joining us. Like, this is really, you're being so generous with your time, because I know that you have like 2 projects. You have Markprompt is huge in terms of a solution for technical writers. Like, your time is so important, and thank you so much for spending us.
It's great pleasure, and thanks for having us.
Yeah. All right, everyone, that is the end. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week. Take care.
Okay.
Everyone.